Hello everyone, welcome to my channel. Today I am going to discuss about important questions from OBG for NEET PG. The first question is, Vago's method is used in cord prolapse, shoulder presentation, impacted breech, compound presentation. The correct answer is cord prolapse. So what is this Vago's method? It is nothing but bladder filling. The bladder is distended with saline to push the presenting part higher up, thereby preventing the compression in case of cord prolapse. The bladder is filled with 400 to 500. The bladder is filled with 400 to 500 ml of NS with Foley's catheter. The balloon is inflated. So, this Vago's method is used in case of cord prolapse. We inflate 400 to 500 ml of NS. So, we infuse 400 to 500 ml of NS so that the bladder is distended so that the presenting part is pushed higher up. So what are the types of malpresentations? Here the given options are shoulder presentation. What is this shoulder presentation? The presenting part will be shoulder. So shoulder presentation or transverse lie. So in this shoulder presentation, there is no mechanism of labor. So the mode of delivery will be cesarean section. And there is higher, in this shoulder presentation, there is highest chance of cord prolapse. Shoulder presentation case comes at term. So we can do external cephalic version. So next type of malpresentation is breech presentation. Breech presentation. Most common cause of breech presentation is prematurity. Most common cause of recurrent breech presentation is uterine anomalies. So there are three types of breech presentation. Three types. One is frank breech, that is extended breech. It is most common. One is frank breech, most common. It is also called as extended breech. Second one is complete breech, that is flexed breech. There will be flexion at hip and knee joint. Third one is footly breech. So the presenting parts will be foots or incomplete breech. In this, cord will be present between the legs. Highest chance of cord prolapse in this type of breech presentation. Whereas in shoulder presentation, there is highest chance of cord prolapse in overall malpresentations. So in this breech presentation, the aftercoming head will get stuck and that causes hypoxia. So what is the absolute indication for cesarean section in case of breech presentation, that is footling? There are relative indications for cesarean section, that is cesarean section is preferred over vaginal delivery in some cases of breech presentation. Cesarean section is preferred over vaginal delivery. It doesn't mean that vaginal delivery is contraindicated. We prefer cesarean over vaginal delivery. What are those indications? One is primi gravida, previous LSCS with breech in current pregnancy. Third one, macrosomia. Fourth one, hydrocephalus, preterm. In this condition, we prefer cesarean section over vaginal delivery. We can do external cephalic version in case of breech. What are the requirements? There should be singleton pregnancy, and there should be intact membrane and adequate liquor. fetal heart rate should be normal, and there should be no contraindication for vaginal delivery. So we can do external cephalic version at 37 week. External cephalic version is done with continuous fetal monitoring under tocolytics. If there is fetal distress, we should reverse the baby to original position and will take for cesarean section. What are the relative contraindication for external cephalic version? What are the relative contraindication for external cephalic version? One is previous LSCS, second one is preeclampsia, third one is IUGR. If there is contraindication for external cephalic version, in case of primi, we'll prefer cesarean section. In case of multi, we can do assisted breech delivery. There are two methods. Losets maneuver, that is in case of extended arms. Second one is Peanut's maneuver for extended legs. There are again many maneuvers for taking out the aftercoming head. One is MSV, Burns-Marshall method, Pregus method, Duerson's incision, where we will take incision, like we'll cut cervix at two places, 2 o'clock and 10 o'clock position. In Duerson's incision, we can deliver by forceps, that is Piper's forceps, and Giovanelli method. These are the various maneuvers to deliver the aftercoming head. So this is about the malpresentations, various types of malpresentations. The second question is, postpartum hemorrhage is defined as loss of more than what amount of ml of blood in vaginal delivery? 500 ml, 750 ml, 1000 ml, 1500 ml. The correct answer is 500 ml. Normally, there will be loss of blood in case of vaginal delivery. Usually up to 500 ml is normal. If it is more than 500, it is called as postpartum hemorrhage. In case of cesarean section, there will be loss of more than 1000 ml of blood. So what are the signs of placental separation? One is there will be gush of blood from vagina and there will be suprapubic bulge. That is placenta will be in lower uterine segment. Permanent lengthening of umbilical cord. There will be permanent lengthening of umbilical cord and there will be increased fundal height. Placenta comes down and it pushes the uterines upwards so that there will be increase in fundal height. The best sign for placental separation is placenta lying in vagina. This is the best sign, placenta lying in vagina. What is mild PPH? If blood loss is more than 500, it is mild. If it is more than 1000 ml, it is severe. Primary PPH is if PPH is seen within 24 hours of delivery, it is primary PPH. What is secondary PPH? If there is more loss of blood after 24 hours and within 12 weeks, it is called secondary PPH. Most common cause of primary PPH is atonicity. Most common cause of secondary PPH is retained placenta. Most common cause of PPH overall is atonicity. So there is prophylaxis of PPH, that is active management of third stage of labor. So what is this prophylaxis of PPH? This is to prevent excess loss of blood after third stage of labor by doing active management of third stage of labor. This contains, there are many steps. First one is uterotonic drugs. Uterotonic drugs. So we should give uterotonic drug immediately after delivery, that is within 1 minute. Within 1 minute we should give a uterotonic drug, that is oxytocin. We use oxytocin 10 international unit. We should give within 1 minute. We can give as IM bolus or IV infusion. We should not give IV bolus because it causes hypotension, reflex tachycardia, arrhythmia, MI, and cardiac arrest. We should not give IV bolus. We can give IM bolus and IV infusion. So how it acts? What is the mechanism of action of oxytocin? So it causes influx of calcium into the cells and there will be release of PGF2 alpha from decidua. So other than oxytocin, what are the other drugs we can use? Methergine. So we can give 0.2 mg IM. So methergine is contraindicated in case of preeclampsia, eclampsia, heart diseases. We can't give methergine. What are the other drugs? Symptometrin, carbetocin, misoprostol. So misoprostol is the oral drug. These are the injectable. This is oral drug. If in case there are no IM and IV drugs available, we can give this oral drug, that is misoprostol. That is 600 microgram orally. So what is the second step of active management of third stage of labor? First one is we gave uterotonic drug within 1 minute of delivery, that is oxytocin. What is the second step? That is delivery of placenta by controlled cord traction. Controlled cord traction. So what is the name of this technique? That is modified Brand-Andrew technique. Modified Brand-Andrew technique. So by this method we use left hand to give traction on uterus, that is on abdomen, and with the right hand we will twist the placenta and by continuous rotation we will remove the placenta. This is called modified Brand-Andrew technique. This is controlled cord traction. So what is the next step? Delayed cord clamping. Delayed cord clamping. That is for more than 1 minute. So by this method 80 ml of extra blood will go to baby. So what are the contraindication for delayed cord clamping? That is, what are the indication for early cord clamping? That is, within 1 minute we will clamp the umbilical cord. What are the indications? If baby needs resuscitation, we should do a early cord clamping. And if baby's blood group is Rh negative, and in case of HIV positive patients, we will do early cord clamping. But in case of PPH management, the method used is delayed cord clamping. So what is the next step? Fourth one, that is intermittent uterine tone assessment. Uterine tone. This is not meant by uterine massage. We should not do uterine massage. This is intermittent uterine tone assessment. So these are the 4 steps of active management of third stage of labor. That is, first we should give uterotonic drug, that is oxytocin, within 1 minute. that is 10 international unit. Second step is delivery of placenta by controlled cord traction. And third one is delayed cord clamping. We should clamp the umbilical cord after 1 minute so that extra amount of blood will go to baby. That is almost 2 mg per dl HB will be increased. Fourth one is continuous uterine tone assessment. So this is the prophylaxis of PPH. What is the management of PPH? How we will manage the case of PPH? Management. First one is stabilize the patient by putting wide bore cannula, that is 14 or 16 gauge needle, and you should start IV fluid and catheterize the patient. So these are the basic management of any bleeding patient or any trauma patient. First we should stabilize the patient by putting cannula and giving fluids. So we should arrange the blood or blood products, and we should do all routine investigation for blood grouping, RH, coagulation profile and all. So what is the specific treatment? What is the specific management? So first we will do uterine massage and call for extra help. One person cannot manage, so we should call for extra need. So we should call for extra hands. After doing uterine massage, we will give uterotonics, that is we will give oxytocin. Oxytocin IV infusion we will give around 20 to 40 international unit. And if patient is not responding to oxytocin, then we should give injection Tranexa. 1 gram IV over 20 minutes. So this is an anti-fibrinolytic. This Tranexa is tranexamic acid. It is a anti-fibrinolytic. If it is not responding, we can give methergine or carboprost. But carboprost is contraindicated in case of asthma. It cannot be given in case of asthma. So if there are no injectable drugs available, we can give again tablet misoprostol, that is 800 microgram. We can give sublingually or per rectally. So by using medical management, that is by using medical drugs, we can wait only till up to 30 minutes. If patient is not responding to these medications, then we should check for placenta, and you should check for any genital tract injuries. We should check for whether placenta is completely removed or no. If there is retained product of placenta, it will cause PPH. And if there is any genital tract injuries, it will cause bleeding. So we should check for these things if it is not controlling. So placenta is completely removed and there is no trauma, patient is having still bleeding, then we can go for balloon tamponading. That is balloon tamponade. So by using balloon, we will instill 500 ml of fluid. So it will pressure. So it will put pressure on the open venous sinuses so that bleeding will be stopped. But we can use Bakri or Sengstaken Blackmore balloon also. If it is not available, we can just instill saline and that will compress the venous sinuses and it will stop bleeding. If patient is not responding, we can do minimally invasive method like uterine artery embolization. This is minimally invasive method. Uterine artery embolization. Usually it won't be available. Then we can go for surgical management. So we can put uterine compression sutures, that is B. Lynch sutures. So we will put sutures on uterus, that is anterior to posterior, then posterior to anterior, that is B. Lynch sutures. If it is not responding, we can do bilateral ligation of uterine artery. There will be bilateral ligation of uterine artery. If it is not improving, then bilateral ligation of anterior division of internal iliac artery. So it will cause reduce in pulse pressure by 80%. If at all, after doing ligation also, if bleeding is not stopping, if patient is unstable, we can go for last mode of resort, that is hysterectomy. We will try to do subtotal hysterectomy, that is supracervical. If at all bleeding is not stopping, then we have to do total hysterectomy. If at all after hysterectomy, if bleeding is not stopping, we should think of coagulative disorder, that is DIC, some other disorder we should think of. So this is regarding postpartum hemorrhage, the active management of third stage labor and the management of PPH. Next question is, the dose of ulipristal for emergency contraception is option A 3 microgram, 3 milligram, 30 milligram, 30 microgram. So what is the answer? 30 milligram. So this ulipristal tablet should be taken within 5 days. This 30 milligram ulipristal tablet should be taken within 5 days of unprotected intercourse. Ulipristal is a synthetic progesterone hormone receptor modulator. So what is the mechanism of action of ulipristal? It attaches to progesterone receptor and delays the ovulation and suppresses the endometrium, thereby preventing implantation. So side effects of this ulipristal is headache, mood changes. What is the most effective method for emergency contraception is copper T. This is the most effective and most commonly used. So what is the most effective hormonal contraceptive is ulipristal. It prevents implantation. If in case implantation has already occurred and we take ulipristal, it acts as abortifacient. LNG tablet. So this is most commonly used because it has only single dose tablet. Should be used within 72 hours of unprotected intercourse. So all emergency contraceptives are effective within 120 hours or 5 days. It should be used, or it is effective till 120 hours or 5 days. So what is the advantage of this emergency contraceptive is there is no need of any other test and pelvic examination is not required. So what is the most commonly used emergency contraceptive? Copper T. What is this copper T? It is an intrauterine device. So it is safe, it is long acting, it is rapidly reversible, it is easily available. That's why it is most commonly used. And it is second generation IUD. Second generation IUD. It is T-shaped. Frame is made up of polyethylene. The surface area is 380. So what is the mechanism of action of this copper T? It inhibits fertilization and it inhibits implantation. It doesn't affect on ovulation. It inhibits fertilization and implantation. So there is something called postpartum IUD insertion, that is within 48 hours of delivery we will insert this IUD. If not possible before 48 hours, we can do after 6 weeks. This is postpartum IUD. What is post-placental IUD? post-placental IUD insertion is within 10 minutes of delivery of placenta. So after putting this copper T, if threads are missing, we cannot see threads. Threads are missing. What to do? We'll undergo USG. If it is not visible on this USG, we can do X-ray pelvis by putting uterine sound with markings. We can do X-ray pelvis by putting uterine sound with markings in the uterus. So if patient is conceived even after using this copper T, there might be chance of ectopic pregnancy. If patient has conceived, then if threads are visible, we can remove that threads and patient can continue the pregnancy. If threads are not visible, so nothing can be done and patient can continue pregnancy. So the copper T is left in situ in case of if it is not visible. So what are the absolute contraindication for IUD insertion? What are the absolute contraindication for IUD insertion? First one is undiagnosed bleeding. If there is bleeding per vagina and diagnosis is not known, so we can't use IUD. And suspected pregnancy. If she is pregnant, we can't use IUD. Acute pelvic infection. Fourth one is Wilson's disease. So these are the main contraindication for copper T. And if there is severely distorted uterus, that is in case of uterine anomalies, we can't use this IUD or intrauterine devices. We can't use. So next question is, which of the following is not included in Rotterdam's criteria? So oligomenorrhea, polycystic ovaries in USG, acanthosis nigricans, serum testosterone level is more than 2 nanogram per ml. The correct answer is acanthosis nigricans. So what is this Rotterdam's criteria? This is the criteria used in case of diagnosis of PCOS, that is polycystic ovarian syndrome. So what are the components? One is clinical or biochemical hyperandrogenism. Hyperandrogenism. Second one is oligo or anovulation. Third one is polycystic ovaries on USG. Polycystic ovaries. Any of the two out of three if present, that is the diagnosis of PCOS. These are the components in Rotterdam's criteria. So what is this PCOS? That is polycystic ovarian syndrome. So this is the most common cause of secondary amenorrhea. This is also called as Stein-Leventhal syndrome. Stein-Leventhal syndrome. That is PCOS. So what is the mechanism? Why it happens? What are the mechanism behind the symptoms? So there will be arrested follicular growth, which causes stromal hyperplasia. That is, from theca cell, there will be excess production of androgen, so which goes to periphery and causes symptoms. There will be arrested follicular growth. It is the main diseases in ovary. This is ovarian disease. So when the androgen level increases in periphery, it causes symptoms. And in majority of cases, there will be insulin resistance and hyperinsulinemia. So there is one terminology called Hare-Ann syndrome. Hare-Ann syndrome. What is this Hare-Ann syndrome? Hyperandrogenism insulin resistance, and acanthosis nigricans. 50% of the patient will be obese. So the main diagnostic criteria used is Rotterdam's criteria. There will be amenorrhea or oligomenorrhea. There will be estrogen breakthrough bleeding. And second one is hyperandrogenemia and hyperandrogenism. Hyperandrogenemia means there will be elevated level of androgens. Hyperandrogenism means clinical features due to elevated levels of androgens. So the testosterone level will be mildly elevated. Normal is up to 70 nanogram per dl. In PCOS, the level will be 70 to 150. And if at all it is more, it should be less than 200 nanogram. So if it is more than 200 nanogram, then it is not due to PCOS. Then you should think of tumors, that is androgen secreting tumors. In PCOS, it won't be more than 200 nanogram. You should think of some tumor secreting androgens. So if testosterone is mildly elevated, it causes hirsutism. That what is hirsutism? There will be appearance of terminal hair in male pattern distribution, and there will be acne and alopecia. The acne will be scarring in nature, and it won't respond to normal routine treatment of acne. So these are the features of hirsutism. So if androgen level is very much high, then it causes virilization. It is not a feature of PCOS. It is feature of androgen secreting tumor. So in virilization, there will be clitoromegaly, hoarseness of voice, there will be increased muscle mass, and typical or male pattern of balding. So what are the USG criteria of Rotterdam's? What is the USG criteria? So there are more than 12 follicles in ovary, and the size will be less than 10 mm, and ovarian volume will be more than 10 cc. So this is also included in Rotterdam's criteria. We can see necklace pattern. We can see necklace pattern or string of pearl appearance, that is cysts present in periphery of ovary. This is not included in Rotterdam's criteria. It is one of the feature in PCOS. So there will be stromal hyperplasia and thickened albuginia. So what is the management of PCOS? How we will manage the patient of PCOS? PCOS patient will be obese. So the main mode of management is reduction of weight. 5 to 10% of the weight she has to reduce. So main thing is reduce the weight. And we can prescribe the drug of choice is OCPs, oral contraceptives. It regularizes the cycles, and it reduces the blood loss, and it protects the endometrium, and it treats the hirsutism. So we will prescribe the oral contraceptives. The drug of choice is oral contraceptive. The first step is weight loss. Next is we will prescribe oral contraceptives. So if patient is having only hirsutism, we can give spironolactone derivative, that is anti-androgen spironolactone derivative, and we can give cryptopyrrone acetate and metformin. Metformin is mild anti-hirsutism drug. It also causes weight loss, but side effects are lactic acidosis, it is hepatotoxic and urinotoxic. So if patient is having infertility, patient will be infertile because the cycles are anovulatory. So we should do ovulation induction. Ovulation induction. So what are the drugs used in ovulation induction? The drug of choice is clomiphene citrate. Drug of choice is clomiphene citrate. Drug of choice for ovulation induction in case of OBs is letrozole. Letrozole, the most common used is clomiphene citrate. This clomiphene citrate, it has antagonistic action. The mechanism of action is central. That is, it prevents negative feedback of estrogen on FSH. So there will be increased FSH, which causes follicular growth. The main pathogenesis of PCOS is there will be arrest in follicular growth. Now by doing negative feedback mechanism, there will be increased FSH, then it causes follicular growth. It causes menstruation. So there will be regularization of menstrual cycle. So letrozole, it decreases the estrogen production, then causing decreased feedback inhibition. So it again increases FSH. So clomiphene dose will be 50 mg for 5 days. And we should do follicular monitoring on USG. If follicles are not growing, then there is no ovulation. The next time we can increase the dose and add metformin. The maximum dose we can give up to is 100 mg. So, and we can wait maximum up to 12 months. Usually we wait for 6 months, but maximum up to 12 months we can wait. The ovulation rate is 80%. So other than this clomiphene citrate and letrozole, there are other drugs like tamoxifen, raloxifene, but these are not routinely used. Most common side effect of clomiphene citrate is hot flash, and it causes ovarian cyst formation and vaginal dryness, and there will be breast tenderness, headache. These are because of antagonistic actions. So the most common side effect is hot flash. See, what are the other drugs for infertility? We can give gonadotropins and laparoscopic ovarian drilling. We can do that. It burns the stroma of ovary, and there will be destruction of stroma, and thecal cell mass will be reduced. We can give gonadotropins. So the main management of PCOS is to reduce the weight, and the drug of choice is OCP. The next question is, which of the following supplementation is recommended by WHO to prevent the preeclampsia? Zinc, calcium, magnesium, iodine. The correct answer is, it is not magnesium, it is calcium. So, especially in case of population with low dietary intake of calcium, the WHO recommended calcium supplementation to prevent preeclampsia. So magnesium sulfate is used in case of eclampsia, but to prevent preeclampsia we will use calcium supplements. So the recommendation is to give 1.5 to 2 gram per day in 3 divided doses. The calcium supplements should be given in 3 divided doses per day, 1.5 to 2 gram per day. The calcium and iron folic acid tablet should not be taken together because calcium reduces the absorption of iron. So we should not take those together. So this is about the obstetric and gynecology questions and answers with explanation. These are the important topics. So this is regarding the discussion of OBG questions. These are the important questions from different topics from OBG. So please go through these topics and related topics. We cannot cover everything in this single video. We'll be taking other classes subsequently. So if you like this video, click like button and please subscribe to my channel for further videos. And if you like this video, kindly share the video. Thank you.